Phoenix Police Department releasing a new use of force policy for its officers yesterday. A change the city says will better define what officers should do in potentially violent and deadly situations. That new policy says that officers, quote, shall use only the force that is objectively reasonable, necessary, and proportional to effectively and safely resolve an incident.
However, both Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, representing rank and file officers, and the Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association, representing their supervisors, have come out against the new policy. So let's ask former Assistant Phoenix Police Chief and current City Councilman Kevin Robinson about what he thinks. Councilman, when does this actually go into effect?
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Sure.
My understanding was it went into effect yesterday.
Okay.
And this is after the entire department has had an opportunity to not only discuss but have input and then be trained through the policy.
So we mentioned those surveys a little earlier, but survey results show that 97% of the members of the Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association believe that this new use of force policy is moving the department in the wrong direction. That is an actual quote from that survey. If mid-level management doesn't think it's going to work, is it going to work?
I think it will. I think what we have to do is really take into account what those surveys were about. And the survey itself wasn't just about the police use of force or the new use of force policy. The survey was about a litany of other things. Chief Sullivan, who's been the interim police chief, he was given a directive when he got here to town a couple of years ago, and that was to effect a change in policies and a host of other things. And I believe he's done that. I believe he's moving in the right direction, maybe to the consternation of some, or maybe a lot of folks. But change is difficult sometimes. When you ask someone to, move an organization in a different direction, not everybody is going to be happy with it.
So, it's one thing not being happy, but let's talk very specifically about the language. Objectively reasonable. That's pretty much, that's pretty vague. Let's be honest.
Well, it's the wording right out of the U.S. Supreme Court case. It's the 1989 case of, Connor versus Graham, or Graham versus Connor. I say that incorrectly, but Graham versus Connor, that established through the Supreme Court for how police departments evaluate or how they determine whether or not force was appropriate. And it carefully articulates the facts and the events that would make the use of force objectively reasonable. And what they mean by objectively reasonable is what would a standard or reasonable normal person look at it? Well, they say, hey, that makes sense. Or, oh my gosh, that was way too much. So objectively reasonable is right out of the verbiage that's used in the Supreme Court case. So I don't have a whole lot of problems with that. The policy itself it's a little bit more strict than what you see in the Supreme Court case, but that Supreme Court case is about 36 years old. Things have changed. Law enforcement has changed. The tools that are available to police officers have changed. So I think we need to, and I say we, I'm talking collectively, we need to move with the times. We need to take into account everything that is going on and trying to be as effective as we possibly can when we encounter individuals who are resisting or who are using force. Because it's going to be up to that individual officer to be able to explain why they used force, and that has always been the case.
We are talking with former Assistant Phoenix Police Chief and current City Councilman Kevin Robinson about the new use of force policy implemented by the Phoenix Police Department. Is the council willing to revisit this pretty quickly if this ends up hindering officers? And then also I wanted to ask you what you expect the community input to be regarding whether Mike Sullivan should stay on as police chief.
Well, let me address the last part first, whether or not Chief Sullivan, I believe he is applying for the position. We're in the middle of an application process. There are going to be citizen panels. Each council office selected a couple of citizens at large to help with the interview process. There is a survey that is out. If you go to the City of Phoenix website, you can provide some input on the chief or anyone else for that matter. and there will be a normal process for the police chief. It'll be extensive. It'll be exhaustive at times, I'm sure. And ultimately, the city manager, Jeff Barton, will make the decision because that's whose responsibility it is. Now, as for the council revisiting the use of force policy, I don't think that is a wise move on the city council's part, personally. But I've been out of law enforcement going on 9 years. Things have changed. There's a lot going on within that realm, and I try to stay up on things as much as I possibly can. But these are people inside of the organization who have helped to fashion this policy. And I think what we need to do is, as you would in a lot of circumstances, let's rely on the experts. Let's not sit back and Monday morning quarterback a policy that is designed to protect not just the community and the police officers, but to protect the individual that's being taken into custody. And what we have to understand is that individual is going to, and it's written in the policy itself, that person will dictate the level of force that's being used. And that wasn't in the policy before. It is now. And I think this new policy really lines things up and explains things in greater detail than it used to before. I thought it was more vague before than what it is now. And this is just a lot more precision to when officers can use force, what's appropriate, when you should try to de-escalate the situation. There's a host of things in the policy that I think makes us a safer community.
Former Assistant Police Chief and current City Councilman Kevin Robinson with us here at KTAR talking about the new Phoenix Police Department use of force policy.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.